This is Operation InSoak. In episode 1, we toured this 1,000-acre ranch near Cuero, Texas, and saw firsthand how quickly rainwater moves off the land. We framed the challenge: how do we keep more of that rain where it falls? Now in episode 2, we're diving into the design, how we approach the land, what we planned, and the strategies we're putting in place to slow the water down, spread it out, and soak it in. This video is made possible by our patrons. Their support allows us to continue to share our educational resources, knowledge, and make these videos for you to enjoy. To get access to additional content from our projects, Q&A priority, and more, click the link below. This is Operation InSoak, and in this episode, we're walking through the design plan we developed to help this 1,000-acre ranch near Cuero, Texas, capture as much rainwater as possible. The property has significant topography, ridges and valleys that naturally funnel rain into a main creek, which then quickly exits the land. As you can see here, water funnels from the north and south side of the property down into the main creek. We used high-resolution LiDAR to study the terrain and find the best spots to slow, spread, and sink rainfall using a mix of simple, low-tech interventions. And here is what we're implementing. Brush berms to interrupt sheet flow on slopes. One-rock dams and zuni bowls and eroded channels to slow and hold water. In a few areas, we're experimenting with berms that redirect flow from the main creek to fill ephemeral ponds before returning water back downstream. This is phase 1, a pilot to test each approach, gather real-world data, and give the landowner a chance to see the options in action before scaling up to the full design.
Okay, so this is where we're using a nature-based solution, ephemeral ponds here at Operation InSoak, to try to catch some of that 432 million gallons a year. That's our potential capture. Sam did a lot of the design work. Tell us a little bit about that process of how we chose where to put these.
Yeah, so it was a really interesting thing to learn about how water moves. You know, there's a lot of nuance to it. Water follows the easiest path to travel. And so, you know, in the process of learning about this project, you know, we looked at the greater waterways of Austin and of, you know, Lady Bird Lake and the Colorado River, and how that water system is controlled and moved. And we then took those ideas that they employed there and scaled it way down and brought it out here to this 1,000-acre property, where here we're building a dam that is going to back up water pretty far back on this property. And you know, the idea is we look at the LiDAR topography of the land and we determine where the water is going to back up the most with the least amount of work, and then we bring our machines out here. We start scraping back all the topsoil. While they're scraping back all the topsoil, which contains the seed bank, and all of the, you know, most readily available nutrients, the goody goods lie at the top. We're moving that to the side so we can retop the dam after we're done. But we take this laser level and we go out and we check to see what makes this surface level, what depth does it need to be to make it a smooth dam wall, because we want to have at least 2 feet of freeboard for this dam. And if you don't know, freeboard is the amount of space between the height of the dam wall and the spillway, so it's never going to get wet in an ideal situation.
One of the biggest mistakes I've seen people do is they'll build a pond without a spillway. And so then that means that water creates its own spillway because it finds the lowest point on your dam, starts to overflow it, and it starts to erode your dam, and then you lose your whole pond. So we chose the spillway to come off of this existing drainage way and then to fall back down into it gently away from the dam wall, so we don't get side cutting and erosion that's going to make the dam wall go away. We did have to clear some trees, but we're gonna use that brush and that organic matter to help armor the backside of the dam wall and the spillway, and we're also gonna build beaver dam analogs out of that, and we'll show you some more of that specifically a little further down the drainage. You guys can see we're using the excavator and the skid steer as a team, and the reason that we do that is because the excavator is really good at loosening the material, and then the skid steer is much better at picking it up and carrying it. So that's what we do, and it really speeds up the whole process, and you can move a lot of earth this way, but you can also have a lot of precision with the smaller machines as opposed to using a bulldozer or a really big excavator. So that's what we're doing here, and we've built I want to say almost 100 ephemeral ponds this way, so it works really well. So this is a hackberry tree here. People love to hate this tree. I've heard it called a trash tree, a junk tree, a garbage tree, a widow maker, all sorts of negative statements about the hackberry. I've never had a problem with them. Songbirds love them. I ate the berries earlier this season and they were delicious. They tasted like maple syrup in a way. There's not a lot of meat in there, but anyway, one of the best trees for songbirds, one of the fastest growing trees. The reason people don't like it is because it only lives for like 50 to 100 years and it grows so fast and it does drop limbs in windstorms and things like that. And because the birds like to sit on your roof or on your fence, that's where they grow, that's where they drop their limbs, and so they can cause damage to stuff. But that's no reason to hate the whole tree.
So down here, we're in kind of a gully. You can see that the water really kind of rushes down through this area. And we see a lot of these mesquite trees, hackberries, cedar elms, persimmon, Texas persimmon growing alongside of it. But with this hackberry in particular, you know, you look at its root structure and you can see just how much soil it is holding up. Like, if I get all the way down to the bottom here, you can see that the soil is almost to my eye line, and these roots are just bolstering it up and holding it back. So, you know, while these trees might not be the most productive tree and they aren't going to give you a bunch of, you know, juicy fruits, they still have a really beautiful purpose when it comes to erosion control as well. We're down here in one of them gullies where the water really picks up speed around this corner and starts really gouging the earth and taking the topsoil and moving it all away and creating these big ruts. So our goal here is to take these trees that are fast growing and in abundance in this area, like for example this hackberry, and we're going to cut a little chunk of it out and do a hinge cut where we still leave the cambium or the living tissue of the tree, the vascular tissue, attached to the main part of the crown, but we lay it down into the gully so it catches all the soil that could be washing away and effectively creates a beaver dam analog. So we're kind of doing some biomimicry with this. And what's really cool about this area in particular is if you look over here, you see that nature's kind of already done it for us. We have this tree that's fallen over. It already has experienced rot and erosion over time. And you can see it's created its own little berm and it's building up soil right here. So by cutting down a tree that's its neighbor and adding to the amount of biology that can stop the soil from flowing down, we're going to be bolstering what nature has already started. So very efficient and working with nature and what has already been established. So here we have a mesquite tree, and beautiful thing about mesquites is they grow fast in Texas. They're one of these trees that moves in as an advantageous species where there's open ground. So here there has been a lot of open ground because of the cattle industry that has existed on this land for quite some time. So we're going to go ahead and do some harvesting of the mesquite. But as you can see right here, the mesquite has this little bottom whip growing out of the base of the tree. So what we are going to do is not remove the tree completely and take it out, because you know, this provides shade, it provides food. The mesquite pods are edible for a lot of animals, and they provide a lot of shade during the extremely hot Texas summers, as y'all know. So we're gonna cut them about 2 to 3 feet away from the trunk and the base of the tree, so we can harvest the top part of it and use that as our beaver dam analog building material.
Nice kick. Yeah, there you go. There you go. There Okay, so this is a hinge cut. We're mimicking just a tree falling down of natural causes. Of course, we're intervening here with a chainsaw, but the cambium layer is still intact, so this tree can actually stay alive and stay connected to its roots. It can keep growing to some extent. These trees also have a tendency to just come right back, especially the mesquite trees. So the idea here is that this is also a little bit like pollarding or coppicing, and that we can inspire new growth from the roots or from the base of the tree. And then we can also harvest that material and continue adding it to these beaver biomimicry brush dams that we're creating here. This one's pretty loose. It's not a packed tight dam like we're gonna do in some cases, because we're doing a lot of different methods to see what works best through experimentation. But as branches and leaves and other forms of sediment are coming down here, all of this roughage and all of this material is gonna slow it down, and so that will start to create just a natural process of smaller, finer materials building up here. So we're cutting down these mesquites here, and you know, I don't love cutting down trees, but there's so many of them out here in South Texas, you know, 1,000-acre ranch. And the thing is, they're actually gonna sprout right back from the roots. Even if you try to dig the roots out, a lot of times they'll come back from the roots. So what we're doing is when we prune these and we put the biomass down in the drainage way and we add it to our beaver biomimicry dams, we're helping to create a stimulation in the soil, because as you prune the top of the tree, it's going to release some of its root mass underground, and that's going to decompose, and then it's going to grow more, photosynthesize, condense carbon and organic matter from the sun and from the air through photosynthesis, and it's actually going to do that in a very fast way, so we can come back in 5 years and we can harvest more of this material and continue to build up these waterways and bring them back up into connection with the floodplain around them. And then all of that water can go through the ground instead of over the surface of the ground, and it can pop out in springs and increase the flow and the consistency of the creek.
I am walking on a cowway that we built on top of this berm. So oftentimes erosion starts because in this land, cows want to get to the water or get to the sweetest grass or the most juicy growth. And that often means down into the gullies. And as they are stepping down these steep hillsides, they'll oftentimes create little pockets in the mud. And when those pockets get a heavy flow of water running over them, they end up eroding, and then you have an even bigger gully that can form right there. So instead of allowing that to happen on this berm that we constructed, we put these rocks to hold the soil in place, but also give the cows something to walk on. And then we put this brush on either side as a deterrent for them wanting to go down this way into our creek area. This bowl is designed to catch water, and so they have multiple access points, and now a nice way to cross over the dam.
This was a small peek into all the work going on at Project InSoak. In episode 3, Jason and Mike will tour the property after the first phase was completed to see how it performed after rainfall. They'll examine the berms, the ephemeral ponds, and see how the dams in the creek performed. Stay tuned for the next episode, this time next week.
All right, hey, thanks guys. Appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to learn more about what we do, how we do it, why we do it, you can hop over to our website. There's tons of good articles. You can join our newsletter. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. We'd love to see you there and answer your questions. Thanks again. Enjoy.